Hello and welcome to the Bridetender podcast. I'm your host, Estee Gordon, and I'm here to tend to the brides like I tend to the bar. So mix yourself a cocktail and let's get ready to discuss all things weddings. Today, I'm super excited. I have Mark Weber here from On The Marc Events, and we're talking about something that is so important that we haven't really touched on at all on this podcast yet, which is the catering aspect of your wedding. And we all know that the food is like top criteria. So everybody get ready. And Mark, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Sure. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
We're going to get into like everything that you do because I feel like your business, just by doing like my own research, I've noticed you have so much going on. You have so many like places that you do it for, and I'm going to tap on all of that. But first, I kind of want to ask you, how did On The Marc Events get started?
Yeah, sure. So I never really thought I was going to become a caterer. Frankly, I started out cooking. I was cooking at 5 years old. My mom, and cooked throughout high school. Worked in restaurants. Started um, working at 15, and then went to Culinary America. Graduated. Uh, I went to New York Institute of Technology for a hospitality degree. Didn't graduate. And then I started cooking. I was private chefing. I had a couple like gigs going on. And I think what's really cool about the catering business, probably some of our other businesses in events, is that it's like super exponential. So you do a party for 10 people, and that goes well. And you do a party for 50 people, and everybody keeps asking if you do a great job. They ask, who did this? Catered, who planned it, whatever. And I was really private chefing, and then the catering business just kind of happened as a result of happy customers. So pretty organically, frankly.
Listen, organically is the best way to go. I will also say, I also went to NYIT.
Did
Um,
you?
I didn't go for hospitality. I actually went
Okay.
for communications. So my background is in public relations and TV production, but my focus throughout like all of college was event planning and PR. But
Oh,
I
awesome.
took a few hospitality classes while I was there.
Which campus?
I went to the one in Manhattan.
Okay, me too.
You did? So
Yeah,
fun.
it's actually, so I dropped out when all the classes started going distance learning to the Westbury campus. And I was like super ADD, and I was like, I can't focus on like this. I mean, I've gotten better at this, but like doing stuff online was just not a thing for me at the time.
Yeah, no, I get that. I couldn't really do like online classes like at all.
Yeah.
And I took one semester where I went back and forth between the Long Island campus and the city just to change it up. And it was like a good change of pace because I'm used to driving opposed to taking the train.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like that city campus was like, it doesn't give you that college experience
No.
that everybody
No.
else has,
Yeah.
but it gives you like real life, like work feeling. Like I felt like I was able to make some connections there. I was like ready for the work world, I think before everybody else was, but I didn't do the whole like crazy college experience that
Yep.
everybody else probably had.
I
So,
hear you. I kind
you
of missed
know,
out on that too.
you can't have it all.
Agreed.
So now On The Marc Events handles the catering for a lot of well-known venues throughout Manhattan, Westchester, Connecticut. What are some events that you've done that have been like special or like really stand out to you?
Yeah, so it's funny. People ask me this all the time, and like we've had the opportunity to cater some really large, really high profile, really special parties. But I think for me, so the reason I do this is like I really enjoy making people happy, and so like that's where most of my fulfillment comes from. So um, the ones that are most special are really the ones where I have like a really deep connection with the customer, and then you get that email on Monday morning, the unsolicited email on Monday morning, which is like, oh my God, this was incredible, blew away my expectations, and all my guests are so happy, and that to me is like the reason I do what I do. And to the other side of it, like God forbid you get an angry, somebody was unhappy about something or disappointed. It doesn't matter how much money it was or how special or high profile. It's just, you know, uh, all the gratification goes away. So I would say I don't have a specific event that sticks out. I mean, there's definitely some larger ones that like probably a little more stressful. But honestly, like we do 10-person parties and we do, 800-person parties, and um, they all receive the same love, and they're all really exciting to be a part of. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of the way I feel about it. So
What are some of the venues that you handle like the catering for to give people like an idea?
sure, yeah. So I mean, we started out as an off-premise, catering company. So we work anywhere. But one of the ways we've really grown is through like the real estate side of the business, by creating exclusive catering contracts that really help to benefit both sides. So we help a lot of nonprofits, places like Fairfield Theater Company in Fairfield, or our Street Team Center in Greenwich, or the Audubon Center in Greenwich, um, monetize their space for events, which really help to raise money to further their cause. We also work with like private locations. Like there's a gentleman who owns an airplane hangar in Danbury, and so when he's not, he can pull the planes out, put them on the tarmac, and we host events in there. So other really creative ways to basically monetize their space during off hours, and some of them are also ones that we have leases on and own and operate. And we have one in Irvington called Hudson Loft, and we have one in Norwalk called Longshore Pavilion, which is this beautiful tent on the water, and then another one in Westport called the Inn at Longshore. So there's a couple other partnerships that we have. So all together, there's about 11 of them right now. So,
Wow. Which is, I mean, great. Are
yeah.
they able to, I know that like Manhattan is like, it's kind of its own world in regards to rules right now and regulations with COVID, but are you allowed to do micro weddings in Westchester and Connecticut?
Yeah, totally. And I'm pretty sure we can do. We have a place in the city called Ivy Terrace, which is basically an amenitized office building, and we have a partnership with them to utilize their space. And so we have an outdoor terrace there, so we can do mini monies and things like that. Obviously, it's a little cold, but for those people who want to embrace the winter, we could certainly accommodate. But yeah, the sales team is definitely mindful of the different like restrictions in each of our locations, and we have to take that into account for sure when planning. So yeah, I actually was on a call with the Events Coalition literally before this, trying to figure out like if they'll be able to give us some certainty as to when things will come back, because all of our customers are trying to. They all think we have a crystal ball, and I wish we did.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy when, we were allowed 50 people, we knew that, and now it's still, things are just like up in the air and people aren't sure, like, are we allowed to do 50? Are we not allowed to do 50? Is there like a cutoff, like a regulation on timing, with everything that's going on with the restaurant industry as well.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's really quite confusing. So
Very confusing, and I'm really hoping we'll have some answers soon because,
yeah, agreed.
oh my God, we don't want
Totally.
to have to reschedule those brides and grooms again.
Yeah, I feel for them. I really do. Think I really feel for a lot of the couples who've had to go through this, and
Yeah.
certainly not the experience I think they were hoping for. But we're certainly grateful that we've had a lot of really really amazing couples who've like stuck with us, and continue to delay their wedding, and it's going to be great when we can actually execute. So.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the positives that's come out of this is that, you always had those brides and grooms, like they were getting married, whether it was Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But now, like any day is fair game.
Yep.
It doesn't even matter what day.
Totally agree. And I think also we're seeing a lot of people who are, they're going to be working from home now. So we're, out in the suburbs, Fairfield County, people would commute in, Thursday, Friday. So now they're a lot more apt to want to host things during the week, I think, because they're not going, most of their friends, at least on the social side, maybe not in the weddings, but they're not necessarily going to work. So a little more flexible on scheduling. Nice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, now we see not so much our industry, but in a lot of industries, you see that so much can be done virtually that you
Yep.
don't technically need to go into the office. So with more people working from home, it's not like they're like, oh, I need to like get up early to like head into the city tomorrow.
Exactly.
So, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
so basically, if you want to get
Just
married on a Tuesday, like we got you.
totally. And they're gonna stay out late anyway, you know, they don't have to get up. Yeah. They sign in and just keep their Zoom on the, not no camera. So
Exactly. We don't really know about that life, but it looks like a
exactly.
lot of people do.
Yeah, totally.
Now, what are some of the services that On The Marc Events handles like for a wedding day?
Sure. Yeah, I mean anything having to do with catering, right? So food, staff, beverage, rentals. Um, we kind of stay in our lane with that stuff. We don't really venture too far into the decor category. We're always super happy to refer outside of, if somebody needs a florist or anything else. But food, rentals, bar, staffing, all that. And if there's something really small, some of our event planners like to do flowers as like a fun thing. So we'll do like one or two bouquets, but that's about where our services end on florals and stuff. So,
Well, I think you guys got a lot on your plate, so
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of detail, especially because when you're off premise, right? Because we're bringing in, every spoon, fork, everything comes in, band-aids, spatulas, like everything has to be brought. So there's just a lot of things to remember and a lot of things you can potentially forget. And so it takes a lot of focus for sure. So,
how long in advance, especially for something like a wedding, typical wedding sizes in New York and Connecticut, pre-COVID were probably anywhere between 100 to 300 people, give or take.
yeah.
How long in advance uh should a couple come to you to book?
Whenever they're ready, we're ready. I mean, I always talk about this concept, especially in the corporate world. And I think, everybody sees this where it's like Amazon catering, like you get a call 2 weeks out and they're like, I have 300 people coming to my office. I need food. And we're like, when did you send out the invites and when did you call the caterer? Like, it's like so funny to me that like that happens. But um, what we saw last year, in 2020 was people were, and I think this is smart, by the way. This is definitely my advice is wait until you're comfortable because what we're seeing a lot of is, people are making plans based on what they hope is going to happen, but not necessarily what might happen. And so what ends up happening is you set your expectations, and I always say like, expectations are the mother of all disappointment. So what happens is you set your expectations, then you get really sad when it doesn't work out. So I think I've told people who want to book, I basically say, look, call me when especially for a smaller party, call me when you're 4 days out. And if you want to have it, and none of your friends have COVID, and you still want to do it, we can do it. We don't need a lot of, lead time. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say 200-person wedding with 3 weeks notice from our perspective would be fine as long as the couple's ready to make decisions. I think that's what it really comes down to is like, from our perspective, our job is easy once you tell us what, we're just executing the couple's vision. So like, once they know what they want, I would say, so.
Okay, so I mean, that's good because I also feel like we're living in a world where so much has been more last minute.
Yeah, and so we've scaled our company to deal with that. By the way, I mean that's like, yeah, we realize that too. I totally agree with you.
Now, being that you do handle a lot of on premise for, many venues, but you also handle off premise.
Yep.
Um, do you think that with things like due to COVID, a lot of people wanted more outside spaces? They don't want to really do the indoor, dining experience because people are more comfortable outside.
Sure.
Um, and a lot of people are doing like that backyard wedding. Like if they have a nice sized backyard. Now, do you think that that's going to be a trend that we see going on for like even past COVID?
So it's really funny. So I live in Westport, Connecticut. It's on the water, and this is somewhat similar here. So, when Hurricane Sandy happened, like nobody wanted to live on the water because all the houses got flooded and everybody was freaked out about living on the water. And now, like, can't get a house in the water. Everybody forgets, you know? And so I will tell you, like, historically, nobody wanted to do tented weddings or tented parties because they were like, what if it rains or what if there's a storm or whatever? And so, I always think that life is kind of like a pendulum where like it swings back and forth. And so right now, tents I think are really, hot, to the point where you can't, I'm hearing like there's shortages and you can't even get them. Um, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money generally to do a tented party because you're basically setting up a venue in your backyard and then tearing it all apart 24 hours later. So, it's a little inefficient, but it's beautiful and it's really special and it's totally custom and it's exactly what the brides and grooms want. So I certainly hope they're here to say I love tented weddings. I think they're always unique, so it's not like we're walking into the same venue that we've been to 20 times.
Right.
Which presents its own challenges, which is fun. That's what we like. We like, creating these special memories in a challenging environment because that's exciting. So yeah, I definitely think for 2021 it's here. I think if there's a huge storm at some point, people are just like going back inside. So because then that's top of mind. So
Yeah. Well, I actually had the same situation as that because I live on Long Island and
yep,
my parents' house is one house away from the water. Where I live now is also across the street from the water. So, like, we had the same situation go on over here. But I will also say, you touched on something that's like very important that I think a lot of brides and grooms should be aware of. A lot of people who don't work in the industry pair up having a backyard wedding with it being more cost effective.
yeah,
And
totally,
like that is not the case. Like,
totally,
and I try to explain that to people too, because it's totally fine if you want to do that. If you want to go that route of doing the backyard wedding and having like an open air tent, should it be a nice day, it's a lot more preparation, and with that preparation, the financial aspect is a lot bigger. There's a lot more to
totally.
bring in.
Yeah, I think also same thing with like casual. People equate casual to cheap, and they're not. Like
Right.
same thing with like backyard. People think backyard is casual. It ends up being more money than going to a really formal event, frankly, sometimes. So yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of educating that we do, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
you're in the same position where you're educating the
Yep.
customer on like, these are common misconceptions, I guess. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
It's like also when you pick a venue that doesn't have catering on site and you have to bring everything in, you have to just prepare yourself that those things, they're not, when they're not already on site, they're extra things that have to go into your budget.
totally.
I have this conversation actually a lot because there's some couples who are totally made for that and like they're organized and they're whatnot. And then there's some that I'm like, no, no, like let's go with something that has a few things already on hand that you don't have to
Yep.
worry about.
I always say like sometimes some couples are really comfortable like in the box. They just want like a nice, clean, comfortable, like safe box where everything's there
Yeah,
and yeah,
where
and I
you
think
go,
everybody has to
they have
do it.
the chairs, they have a
Yep,
linen, they have, yeah.
yep, totally. Different strokes for different folks. Sure.
Exactly. Nothing wrong either way. Just
No, I think they're both great.
knowing
Totally.
knowing who you are and what
That's
you
exactly
can
it. Yeah,
handle.
know yourself. Because from our perspective, we just want to make them happy, right? And so yeah, cool.
Exactly. Now, a lot of hospitality professionals, they're very creative. We see this like people who do flowers, people who do catering, people who, work in event planning and they deal with the design. What are some of your favorite things about like kind of the creative process in the catering world?
That's a good question. So I would say, so the challenge we have is the cooking side of it. So we have this like very restaurant style pickup. We don't use any hot boxes. So actually, all of our chefs are actually restaurant chefs that we've that are now in catering. And so we've adapted a lot of those restaurant style, uh, the word, procedures, recipes to like catering um, uh, format. And so I think what we have to constantly think about and be thoughtful is how are we going to pick this up in the field, right? So it's like if we're working on a conference room on the 64th floor, of a Manhattan skyscraper, and they want burgers and fries, like there's no ventilation. Like how are we going to do that, right? And so we have to. So I always say that the menu has to be adapted to the location. And so when you plan well, you plan a great menu, you're going to have a successful event. If you plan a really not so smart or not so strategic menu, it's very difficult to execute. And so for me, I feel like that's where a lot of the creativity and fun part comes in, which is taking these unique environments that people bring us and adapting a menu that works in that environment. And so for me, that's really fun because it's like operationally challenging and like a big chess game. So,
Yeah. And people don't realize that depending on the event that you're doing and the location where you're doing it, the logistical factor is so important about
totally.
how you're going to get the food to that location that makes the most sense.
Yeah, how are you gonna pick it up, right? Like, how are you gonna? It's not only, yeah, you're right. It's not only like we did a party on in Fort World Trade Center before it was built. And we were bringing the food up in like one of those like things that are on the side of the building. I don't even know what they're called, but they like go up the outside of the building on like a construction site. And then so like yeah, there's getting it in there, but then there's also just like what's the power, what's the ventilation, and how much space do I have? How am I going to get this menu that they've requested into that space? So,
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah. But I feel like in our field, we like enjoy these like little challenges.
Oh, that's where all the fun is. Yeah, totally.
If you don't have an adrenaline rush, you're just not doing it right.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of like it's kind of like it's funny. I question about like an adrenaline junkie. Like if I should be jumping out of airplanes, I'm totally afraid of heights. Like
You're not a little stressed out. I mean,
yeah,
does it count?
no, totally. Like totally. Well said. Well said.
Now, with everything going on with COVID, which has just been, the bane of our existence for almost a year now, how has On the Marc Events had to navigate business during this time?
Sure. So we've embraced the one thing we said we never do. So we've kind of gotten like far outside of our comfort zone, which is delivery. So like we've like since we started, we've been an events only catering company, and we've had lots of people call in and say, "Can you deliver hors d'oeuvres? Can you deliver lunch or whatever it is?" And the answer is always, "And unfortunately, we'd love to help you, and thanks for thinking of us, but unfortunately, we can't, just because we can never control the execution." But when this whole thing started, and basically in like 3 days, we had a pretty large team at the time and a full-time IT hero, and our marketing team. And so like they basically like worked for 3 days straight to like create this Shopify website and this whole concept of Crave, which is like bulk delivery. So it's not like delivering like a restaurant style meal where it's like you get your chicken and your broccoli and your rice all on one plate. And, comes hot. This is like something where you can order a bunch of food all at once, and then you can freeze it or serve it as you need. Um, and so it was wildly successful. It was incredible. And we had some really, our clients are just um, wonderful in that they've like helped to support us, and so that really helped us through March, April, and May, and then we kind of did some events, and then we've kind of embraced Crave again, and there's questions about whether or not we're going to keep it open when this whole thing's over, because we've really built it out and like kind of figured out all the quirks. But my goal, and I think my whole team's goal, is we can't wait to get back to doing events. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're living in a time where we've had to, totally like reinvent what we do.
Yep.
And, with now so many people who are home or staying home to eat dinner or whatnot, you've been able to really branch out. And now, like, now you're not just like doing events, you're like fully like, kind of catering to people in their home.
We're basically a restaurant. I mean, we basically embraced some of that restaurant style. So now we started out, we were just delivering like Tuesdays and Fridays. Now we're delivering 4 days a week, and you can order by 11 a.m. and get it by 5. So yeah, and kept the same quality, and it's been great. But something that again doesn't not what we came here to do. It's just a kind of a means to the end of it, frankly. So
Now, also, you have a cookbook out. Tell us a little
yep.
bit about that.
Yeah. So we crazily enough shot, wrote, designed a cookbook in house. I think we started in 2016. Took some time to get it all together. We went through a couple writers, a couple publishers, um, and Caitlin and my office, my chefs, were instrumental in basically getting this thing off the ground. And we recently won an International Association of Culinary Professionals cookbook, self-published cookbook of the award, self-published cookbook of the year award. Yeah, so it's been, and so what it is, it's called Beginnings: How the Party Started, and it's 50 hors d'oeuvre recipes. So the idea is like the beginnings of a party, and then it also has like these vignettes about how the company began, and then some drinks, like some aperitifs, cocktails, kind of again, so all beginnings of a party and of a company. So
Listen, I mean, with a lot of people at home now, they need those recipes, you know?
yeah, I will say as a morning, they're not necessarily like recipes that you can just like. It's not there. It's the exact opposite of 30-minute meals. So 30-minute meals is like, you come home and this is like you need like 3 hours and a bunch of time and shopping to put these recipes together. Which again so I think for a lot of we're lucky to have a lot of really great culinary professionals that come from the CIA and young passionate chefs and cooks who are like look up to like where the company is and think about going into catering. I really want to bring a lot of awareness to catering because I really it's never been like the sexy part of the industry to go to. So like when we were in school, we were like, where are you going to go? And if one kid's like Per Se and one kid's like Jean George and all those really incredible restaurant chefs, and that's where they want to go, to stage or work. And I want to bring those people into catering. So I'm kind of like trying to show that there is something in catering and it's exciting. So that was one of the another reason. It wasn't just client facing; it was also like industry facing. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So.
Yeah. What do you see? Like, what do you predict is the future of the wedding industry? Like, what do you think are trends that are here to stay and things that, might not come back?
I think small parties are here to stay. Like, I think the idea of, I have take a budget $20,000 and I'm gonna try to get as many people as I can for like, a really reasonable location. Um, Versus now I'm gonna take 20 people and create this like perfect toolbox little wedding with high-end catering and beautiful flowers and all the best vendors and just try to basically not spread that money out over so many people and just keep it more intimate. I think is here to stay. There, I have no reason to I have no data to like back that up with, but I think that people are probably seeing that they're going to these parties and they're having a great time, and so yeah. I mean, I think also the other side could be there could be the other side of that too, which is like people haven't seen any of their friends in so long, and they're just like, I want to see everybody, and I want everybody at my wedding, and I want to celebrate with everybody. So I can see that going both ways a little bit. But
Yeah. I mean, I think people are going stir crazy that they're ready to get out and, past this. But I do think that the micro wedding trend is here to stay. I don't know if we're going to see like these 300-person weddings anymore. I mean, do I think that we're still going to see 100-person weddings? Yes. But I think that that intimate feeling is here to stay for the long term.
yeah, I think also it's funny because you look at like people's access to like these incredible photos like on Pinterest or Instagram or whatever. And we get this a lot where we unfortunately have to kind of like break hearts where they're like, we want this, and we're like, we can do that, but it's going to be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I think that by reducing the guest count, it does give you a little bit more flexibility to have some of those really special or opulent, you know, dishes or presentations or whatever, just because there's fewer people, so the whole thing becomes a little easier. So
Right. Yeah. I always said, like, for myself, and this is just from somebody coming who's been in the industry, I've been in the industry most of my life, is that I will chop my guest list before I chop the things that I want, because
before you chop dessert.
oh, I'm not chopping dessert.
Exactly.
I'm not. Yeah, we
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier, us, but a lot of people, like, it's not as trendy now to like do multiple desserts or have like a dessert bar or a candy bar, anything like that. And I like 100% do not agree. Like, I I'm not like the type who's like, just do a wedding cake. Like, no, you will never hear that from me. Like, the more is more, and I like to see variety. But that's just coming from the catering end.
That's awesome.
Now, what advice do you have for our brides and grooms who are currently planning during a pandemic?
Yeah, I would just say be realistic. I think as far as like timing, and also kind of like going back to our comment before, was like kind of like know yourself. I mean, we had brides and grooms who we have it right now, who are like, I'm having my wedding on May 16th. I don't care what happens. I don't care if I have 50 people or the 250 I want to have. I'm having this party, and no one's going to stop me basically. And then we have people who are a lot more cautious, and I think the idea, I think last year too, one thing that we're seeing is like you had elderly family, grandparents, etc., who you really wanted to be there. You were definitely pushing because those people had no vaccinations. They were definitely a lot more vulnerable. So now that we're seeing, those older generations getting vaccinations, even if all the 30 somethings aren't vaccinated, but those more vulnerable populations are, I think people might be a little bit more going on, having these parties, especially outside. But I think on our side, we're seeing a lot of people and brides and grooms are doing a lot of planning. And I think that they're not exactly sure when to pull the trigger, which I get it. But I just would say I try to be realistic on when you really think things are going to come around and where you are in this like spectrum of like, I'm going to do it no matter what. And if there's and if there's any risk, I'm not doing it. Right. And so there's like this continuum, and you have to figure out where you are on this thing and
Right.
be true to that. So,
Yep. Yeah. There's no right or wrong way. It's just what works best for you as a couple. Like,
totally.
are you going to push it back until when you can do 200 people? Do what you got to do. If you're like, I don't care, I want to get married on that day, and you're comfortable with, a smaller amount of guests, that's okay too. It's just,
Well, and also there's outside factors. Like we have some couples who are all their families overseas. And so, like, if they can't get here, they're not comfortable, or if the vaccinations aren't happening at the same rate they are here, things like that. So, there's just a lot of unique circumstances. So it's really hard for me to like give a magic pill advice on like how everybody should react. But I just think it's a very personal decision. I think all this, I think everything COVID related is, people. It's just a personal decision. So I think people have to do what's right for them and just know who you are and how much risk you're willing to take, I guess. So
yep. Well,
yeah,
I agree with you on that for sure.
yeah.
So, Marc, tell everybody, where can they follow you? Where can they see your stuff? Where should they look?
Yeah, thanks. So on themarcevents.com. We also have an Instagram, on the Marc Events Instagram. My Instagram, I'm not the biggest Instagrammer, I'll put it out there, but on the Marc Weber, Marc with a C, Weber. Yeah, I think that's all of our social stuff. Oh, we'll end up we'll tag you and you'll tag us. If there's anything,
We're gonna tag you and everything.
Actually, I did miss a bunch. So all of our venues also have, and a lot of them. So like there's yeah. So we'll put all the tags on there. So anybody who wants to follow, please do. That would be wonderful.
I definitely will. Marc, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad we got to talk so much about food and culinary, and we haven't done that yet on this podcast, surprisingly. So
and dessert.
it's great. I look forward to both you and myself having like a very prosperous like transition back into wedding season. Fingers crossed. I am hoping and praying for some normalcy. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to today's episode of the Bridetender podcast, where we have a new episode every single Monday. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as now on YouTube, because we're now on YouTube and, you should watch us there instead of just listening. You can follow me on Instagram at the Bridetender, where I share fun facts on the wedding industry, ways to save money on your special day, and hiring the best in the business to execute for your wedding day. Make sure to go follow Marc at On The Marc Events. Check out his work. Look into his cookbook, look into Crave and, ordering, dinner in, if you want a romantic night in with your fiance, now is the time to do it. We're doing romantic nights in now, opposed to out. Until next week, mix yourself a cocktail, slide into my DMs with questions you want answered on all things weddings. Stay sane, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.